Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ahmad Shahmi bin Ahmad Sharafi. My metro number is 272003. And today I would like to present about human rights and bonded labor in India. In India, bonded labor is common. Bond labor is when employees are obliged to work to pay debts to their employers and cannot work for others. These bonded laborers cannot say no and cannot enjoy life because they are always under the supervision of the employer. Employers cheat them into paying off their loans and pay employees very little or nothing at all. Modern slavery uses bond labor. There was one report that reported a heartbreaking story about the bonded labor involving an 8-year-old boy whose parents were abused after getting financial help. The parents were reported to be bonded laborers and had worked hard for 5 years to pay 25,000 rupees. The reporters state they shared the hut with 3 other families of bonded laborers. The father was molested when he asked for the help of his employer to take his son to the hospital. Father reported the attack to the Guna Station House, and her son could not live because it was too late to take him to the hospital. India and Pakistan use bonded labor. Modern slavery is bonded labor. The whole family had to work to settle the debts of family members, and if they couldn't, the burden would pass on the next generation with growing interest. Hundreds of thousands of men, women, and the children were forced to work in brick kiln and farm plantation across India. Bonded labor also defines bound labor. Bound labor also defined as the employer-worker relationship. It is ingrained in the economic and social system of India. Bonded labor encompasses caste structure, social history, and enduring poverty. This kind of labor limits the working time of the employee. Some also define bonded labor as employees who repay loans to employers. Although the Indian constitution prohibits bonded labor, the country socio-economic structure makes forced the labor the only option to settle obligations. Most women and children in bonded labor are dead. Next part is I would like to talk about the Human Rights Convention on Bonded Labor. So India's bonded labor violates international human rights conventions. In these situations, victims of all ages, including children, don't get justice. Children are given job regardless of time or situation. At 8 until 9 years old, adolescents have such adult duties that they have no entitlement to study. This affects their self-esteem and dignity. And UNICEF believe that children's employment cannot be overlooked if it is done full-time at a young age, hurting their emotions owing to physical, social, psychological stress, insufficient salary. On 20 November 1989, the United Nations General Assembly unanimously approved the CRC, which went into effect on 2 September 1990. And 1992 saw India's ratification. This convention enshrines children's political, economic, social, health, civic, and cultural rights. Article 32 of the CRC states that state parties must safeguard children from risky occupations that interfere with their education, health, physical, social, mental, and spiritual development. Children in factories and silk trade workshops in India are injured by machineries and sharp threads. Smaller hands mean more tidy and detailed work for children. Children also suffer from diesel smoke from equipment and insufficient ventilation, which causes asthma and chronic bronchitis. Their jobs cause external and internal harm. The International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights is also connected to bonded labor in India. It's about their economic rights, such as poor pay. This treaty protects minors against social and economic exploitation. All parties recognize everyone's entitlement to favorable and fair working circumstances. The United Nations Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights has outlined Article 13 requirements for educational rights in the general comment. Other agreements besides these two include bonded labor in India. These conventions ensure these groups' political, social, and economic rights. Implementations depends on countries meeting their international cooperation obligations. They need ongoing development aid. Since 1989, practically everyone has endorsed CRC. This convention could change the lives of children worldwide. International collaboration is needed to protect bonded labor victims, particularly children. After that, I would like to come out with the solutions that try to solve the issue of bonded labor in India. The first one is India's efforts to end bonded labor in India. So the issue of bonded labor in India has reached a crisis stage. Therefore, it's only logical that the government issues regulation to address it. The Bonded Labor System Act was passed in 1976 under Indira Gandhi. This Bonded Labor System Act created a reference and precedent for future labor difficulties and bonded labor in India. 2 years after passing the Bonded Labor System Act in 1976, the Indian government approved a law that guaranteeing employment for one adult family member in rural or distant India. 1978 National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. The Indian government developed a national initiative to provide 20,000 rupees or in Malaysian is 1,100 ringgit to families targeted by law. The law has stipulations not all rural or distant families will receive this aid, but only those with heavy financial difficulties or heavy financial problems that will qualify that to receive this aid. And some Indian states governments prefer to give this aid to landless agriculture and plantation laborers. In 1986 and 1987, the Child Labor Act and National Policy on Child Labor were passed to combat child bonded labor. Through these two regulations, the Indian government developed a team of supervisors to supervise children's labor hours and circumstances. This team also prevent irresponsible people from employing minors in dangerous sectors. These two statutes also develop programs to rehabilitate, feed, and educate bonded children. Arnab Basu and Nancy Chow, research professors at the Charles H. Dyson School of Applied Economics and Marketing, say that poor pay of laborers and farmers are lack of alternative loans for families below the poverty lines are the key causes of high bonded labor cases, primarily in India. And in 1994, India passed the Child Labor Elimination Act law. Schools in India have started to integrate a lot of vocational curriculum and training for their students so they can find a better career after graduation. The second one is ILO's Bonded Labor Initiative in India. In these sections, the article will discuss the role of International Labour Organizations, ILO, a United Nations specialized agency, in addressing contemporary slavery around the world, including bonded labor in India. ILO, a United Nations organization, has created numerous measures to combat bonded labor in India. First, the ILO has decided to prevent future bonded labor victims. United Nations agency partners with India's Ministry of Labour and Employment under the initiative Reducing Vulnerability to Bondage via Promotion of Decent Work. As development partners, the project invites the Canadian government's labour program and the Flemish Department of Foreign Affairs Flanders Trust Funds. This initiative began in 2008 and ran from 2011 to 2013 across Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Odisha, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, and Bihar. It targets local and migrant employees, especially their children, that harmed by bonded labor in big kilns. ILO provides technical assistance to national and state government in this project. Before 2011 to 2013 joint initiative, government implemented Tamil Nadu pilot project in 2008 to 2010. The increasing engagement of states in India in this outcome of multiple regions, replicating a similar project. In this case, the project made headway in addressing bonded labor in India. The Tamil Nadu pilot project in 2008 until 2010 only targeted workers in the brick kiln sector. Local government, ILO, trade unions, and local employers tried to improve communication to formalize employer and employee interactions. This project aims to standardize working ties and help workers escape debt labor. ILO collaborates with India's government to break the modern slavery link. Grain banks, compulsory savings, flexible savings, loans for diverse processes, micro-insurance, micro-license, asset or cash transfer, food subsidies, and stipends are supplied. Once freed from bonded labor, employees should be able to provide for their families more independently. Later, families can use the savings to pay for their children's education and send them to school, which can help reduce child labor. The product's financing means to prevent bonded labor. The third one is NGO efforts to end bonded labor in India. Diverse interests have comment on bonded labor. Non-government organization NGO is an active stakeholder in this topic. Anti-Slavery International ASI covers slavery worldwide. Local organizations help them monitor human rights. ASI team visits Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, and another hotspot with bonded labor violations. They address the matter by relying on the workers for their rights. ASI members also share groups advocacy awareness in the labor village and at home. ASI plans to register all workers in government schemes so they can acquire medical insurance and lessen their dependence on debt bondage. Instead of educating workers about their rights, ASI releases around 2,000 bonded laborers each year. ASI also has developed a 24-hour toll-free hotline to the citizens that can report exploited brick kiln workers. ASI's efficiency approach led to 10 daily calls within 3 months. ASI received 1,000 cases of Indian kiln bricks workers. The landlord's violation and physical abuse traumatized the employee. Mentally and physically abused, they were likely traumatized. Self-reliance helped workers fight for their rights. The teams coordinated compared kiln bricks and common labor. From the sessions, employees realized the landlord system had a large gap with common labor. Brick kiln workers lacked control over their schedule, family, and education rights. It's apparent that NGOs are quite engaged in combating bonded labor. They release thousands of slaves each year, teach worker rights to locals. Workers are occasionally aware. They fear for the kids. They fear their children will have no money, no home, and no earnings. Stay desperate. COVID-19 could spread bonded labor, concluding millions of people lost their jobs and need to make a living. As small brick kiln workers borrow from landlords, the cyclical system of bonded labor will continue. The next part is suggestions in improving action for stakeholders. Bonded labor happens when a person is forced to work in order to pay off a debt. They are coerced into working with no leverage over their debt for little to no pay. It is 2020, but in India, bonded labor is still a reality. NGOs, IGOs, and the government must therefore play a role in overcoming the problem. NGOs need to provide action to end bonded labor. NGOs should conduct daily raids at workplaces where bonded labor is performed and free these children from bonded labor practices. In order to report bonded labor within cooperation, NGOs will need to establish relationships with locals in villages and towns. With the assistance of NGO scholarships and other programs, families are advised to drive their children toward higher education. In order to deter families from making the desperate decision to sell their children into a life of slavery, access to education and vital services is allowed. The United Nations Working Group on Contemporary Forms of Slavery should advise the Human Rights Commission of the United Nations to investigate the compliance of the government of India with international laws and standards banning bonded labor and to censor non-compliance. Human Rights Watch suggests that the working group conduct a fact-finding mission to India and make recommendations aimed at eliminating bonded labor as a step towards ending bonded labor in India. Next, in order not to be coerced into bonded labor, the government needs to increase the level of education and prioritize the participation of children. For children between the age of 9 and 14 who drop out or never go to school because they have to work to pay off the debts of their parents, the government needs to provide programs that provide informal education centers. This will prepare students for integration into the school system. The education aspect for children over the age of 14 requires the provision of basic literacy and numeracy classes and skills training. The stakeholders should always be sensitive to bonded labor issues so that this issue will not continue anymore. This is because bonded labor is wrong and it has violated human rights. Bonded labor need to be curbed to make sure children are no longer oppressed and being used for useless work. As a conclusion, just a simple conclusion that I hope every parties in this world or in the government of India itself will cooperate each other to solve this bonded labor issue in India, because it clearly violates the international law and the human right. That's all for me. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.